they never saw me coming. That's what I'm thinking as I watch my family settle into their VIP seats at Lakeview State University's graduation ceremony, 3 rows from the stage where all deliver the valedictory address in 20 minutes. My father, Richard Hale, adjusts his Armani cufflinks and scans the crowd like he's counting potential clients. My mother, Vivien, smooths her cream-colored dress and offers practiced smiles to the university donors flanking their section. And my younger brother, Mason, Golden Boy Mason, waves at the cameras like he's already accepting an award. They're here for him, of course. They think today is his victory lap. The May afternoon sun filters through the elm trees lining the quad, casting long shadows across the sea of black caps and gowns. Somewhere in this crowd of 3,000 graduates, I'm invisible to them, just another face they wouldn't recognize if they tried. Which they won't. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. President Lorraine Park steps to the podium, her silver hair catching the light. Before we begin, she announces, her voice carrying across the speakers, I want to acknowledge a transformative gift that has changed our campus forever. My father leans forward. Mason's grin widens. They think they know what's coming. 5 years ago, an anonymous donor reached out to our Office of Student Success. They called themselves North Star. Today, thanks to their generosity, we dedicate the First Gen Scholars Center, a space that has already helped over 2,000 students graduate debt-free. The applause ripples through the crowd. My mother clasps her hands together, assuming Mason's internship somehow contributed to this. My father's chest puffs with inherited pride. Mason nods like he's accepting congratulations. None of them notice me in the 3rd row of graduates, cap tilted just enough to shadow my face. Today, President Park continues, we finally reveal the identity of North Star. She gestures toward the gleaming building behind her where a cloth covers a bronze plaque. The benefactor who made this miracle possible. The camera pans across the VIP section. Richard straightens his tie. Vivien touches her pearl necklace. Mason prepares his humble acceptance face, the one he's practiced since childhood for moments exactly like this. The cloth falls. Jordan Reyes, President Park reads from the plaque. Graduate, philanthropist, and today's valedictorian. My mother's hand flies to her throat. The name Reyes, her maiden name, the one I've used for 5 years to stay hidden from their world, hits her like a revelation. Her eyes dart across the graduates, searching. My father's smile freezes. Mason's wave falters mid-gesture. I stand as my name echoes across the quad, not as a Hale, but as myself. For the first time in 24 years, they see me, really see me, and they have no idea what's coming next. To understand why today matters, you need to know the years they never cared to see. The pattern started early. I was 12 years old when I realized I was the wrong kind of Hale son. It was a Tuesday night in our Winnetka mansion, the kind of evening where the dining room chandelier cast everything in warm gold and my mother's china gleamed like it was auditioning for a magazine spread. We were celebrating Mason's acceptance into the gifted program at his private school, the same program I'd been in for 2 years without so much as a congratulatory nod. Mason's teacher says he shows exceptional leadership potential, my father announced, carving into his perfectly prepared beef tenderloin. Natural charisma, that's what builds empires. Mason, all of 8 years old, practically glowed under the praise. I told everyone about Hale's signature events during show and tell. Mrs. Peterson said I was very articulate. That's my boy. Richard reached over to ruffle Mason's hair, the same gesture he'd never once offered me. You understand what it means to represent this family. I pushed my peas around my plate, thinking about the Academic Achievement Award I'd received that afternoon. It was still in my backpack by the front door, forgotten the moment Mason bounded in with his gifted program paperwork. Jordan received an award today, too, my mother said quietly, her voice careful and diplomatic. My father glanced up briefly. That's nice. Pass the salt. That was it. 2 words and a condiment request. The inequality crystallized over the following years like ice forming on a window. Slow, then all at once. When Mason turned 14, he got an internship at Hale's signature events, shadowing the marketing team and posing for company newsletters. When I turned 16, I got assigned to help the valet staff park cars at events. Character building, my father called it. Everyone starts somewhere. Except Mason hadn't started anywhere. He'd started at the top. I watched him give interviews to the company blog about innovation in hospitality, regurgitating buzzwords while taking credit for ideas that came from overworked staff members. I watched him get fitted for custom suits while I wore hand-me-downs. I watched him learn the business from executives while I learned it from the people those executives exploited. By my senior year of high school, the message was clear. I was the spare, not the heir. That's when I made the decision that would change everything. I want to apply to colleges using Mom's maiden name, I told Vivien one afternoon when my father was traveling and Mason was at lacrosse practice. She looked up from her correspondence, startled. Why would you do that? Because I want to know what I can accomplish when I'm not competing with the golden boy for scraps of attention. Her face went pale. For a moment, I thought she might object, might defend the family's treatment of me. Instead, she reached into her desk drawer and pulled out a bank card. There's an account under my maiden name, she said softly. A foundation account I've never used. The PIN is your birthday. She never asked why I needed to disappear. Maybe she already knew. If they wouldn't see me as a Hale, I'd make a name for myself another way. Chicago at 3 in the morning is a different city entirely. The streets hum with delivery trucks and night shift workers, people who keep the world running while everyone else sleeps. I became one of them during my sophomore year at Lakeview State, trading my family's money for something they couldn't buy: purpose. The warehouse kitchen where I worked sat in an industrial stretch near the south side, all concrete floors and steel prep tables that echoed with the clatter of hotel pans. Marcus Reed, my manager, was a 40-something former line cook with arms like tree trunks and a laugh that could cut through the din of industrial dishwashers. You're not like the other college kids, he told me after my 3rd week, watching me scrub down prep stations with the methodical precision I'd learned from years of being invisible. Most of them treat this like a tourist attraction. You work like you need to be here. I did need to be here, though not for the money. Every night shift taught me something my father's empire had hidden from view. I watched catering staff work 16-hour shifts for Hale's signature events, their timesheets mysteriously edited to avoid overtime pay. I saw drivers delivering to high-end venues with no break time built into their routes, subsisting on energy drinks and desperation. Your family's company contracts with us, Marcus mentioned one night, sliding a stack of invoices across the prep table. Hale signature events. Fancy stuff. Real particular about presentation. Real cheap about paying what they owe. I kept my expression neutral, though something twisted in my chest. What do you mean? You look at this line item. They ordered service for 300 guests, but only approved payment for staff to serve 250. Guess who makes up the difference? Us. We either eat the extra labor costs or send understaffed crews to their events. That night, riding the bus back to my dorm as the sun crept over Lake Michigan, I started sketching ideas on the back of order slips. What if there was a way to connect students who needed support with resources that actually reached them? What if workers had advocates who understood the system from the inside? Telling and preparing this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now, back to the story. The idea grew in the spaces between exhaustion and hope, fueled by conversations with classmates who juggled 3 jobs to afford textbooks and meals. By my junior year, those sketches had evolved into something bigger, a framework for change that could operate in the shadows while the Hale name dominated headlines. Out of exhaustion and scraps, Bridge Lane was born.
But first, I needed to find people who believed that fixing the system mattered more than getting credit for it. The Pilsen Community Center smelled of coffee and possibility on the Saturday morning I first pitched Bridge Lane to Anna Morales. She sat across from me at a folding table covered with grant applications and half-empty energy drink cans. Her dark eyes skeptical as I outlined my vision for microgrants and academic support.
"So let me get this straight," Anna said, leaning back in her plastic chair. "You're a business major with access to funding, and you want to start a nonprofit that helps first-generation students. What's the catch?" I'd rehearsed this moment, but Anna's directness cut through every prepared answer. "No catch. I've seen how the system fails people, and I want to fix it." "People like me, you mean?" Her voice carried an edge that reminded me why she'd become one of the most effective community organizers on the South Side. "Rich boy wants to save the poor kids?" "People like me," I said quietly. "People who don't fit the narrative their families wrote for them." Something shifted in her expression. She studied my face for a long moment, then nodded toward a corner where a girl about my age was hunched over a laptop, surrounded by textbooks and what looked like a month's worth of notes. "That's Harper Singh, junior year computer science major, working 30 hours a week at a campus bookstore to pay rent. She's brilliant, but she's about to drop out because her financial aid got cut and she can't afford both tuition and housing." I watched Harper type with the desperate efficiency of someone racing against time. What would it take to keep her enrolled? $1,500 to cover the gap until next semester's aid kicks in, transportation vouchers so she doesn't have to choose between gas money and groceries, maybe a study space where she doesn't have to compete with her roommate's TV habits. Done. Anna raised an eyebrow. Just like that? Just like that. Over the next 3 hours, Anna introduced me to a dozen students whose stories followed the same pattern: brilliant minds trapped by systems that punished poverty while rewarding connections. We sketched out a framework that could respond quickly to emergencies while building long-term support networks. "We need to be careful about bias," Anna warned, as we refined the application process. "Committees favor stories that sound familiar. We need rubrics that look past presentation to actual need." Harper joined us after her shift, bringing spreadsheets that turned our ideas into actionable systems. "If we can track outcomes and scale efficiently," she said, her fingers flying across the keyboard, "we can prove this model works for replication." 3 weeks later, 12-year-old Tuel Yun-Wen changed everything. He was Anna's neighbor's kid, part of our pilot tutoring program, and he had a gift for seeing patterns others missed. After our session on basic astronomy, he handed me a hand-drawn star map, complete with constellation names in his careful block letters. "You're like the North Star," he said matter-of-factly. "You help people find their way, but you stay in the same place so they don't get lost." That night, I opened the foundation account under a new name, North Star. While Bridge Lane quietly helped students across Chicago, the Hale publicity machine rolled into overdrive. I watched from my warehouse break room as Mason appeared on the local business channel discussing innovative approaches to hospitality management with the confidence of someone who'd never worked a service shift in his life. "The future of our industry lies in understanding what clients truly value," he told the interviewer, his smile perfectly calibrated for the cameras. "At Hale Signature Events, we're not just planning occasions, we're crafting experiences that reflect our clients' vision of success." The interviewer nodded appreciatively. "You're being groomed to take over the family business. How does that feel?" "It's an honor to carry forward my father's legacy," Mason replied, hitting every talking point Richard had drilled into him. "But I'm also focused on bringing fresh perspectives to the table. Our generation understands that luxury means different things to different people." I nearly choked on my coffee. Mason's idea of fresh perspective was suggesting they offer vegan options at corporate galas, and only after the catering staff had already proposed it 3 times. The real Mason emerged in the unguarded moments between takes, when he thought the cameras weren't rolling. I caught a glimpse of him during one of his promotional shoots for the company newsletter. his confident smile faltering as he stumbled over industry terminology, his eyes darting toward the PR manager for rescue. But the machine didn't stop for doubt. Within months, Richard had positioned Mason as the public face of Hale Signature Events' expansion into university partnerships. The contracts rolled in: Northwestern, DePaul, and eventually Lakeview State, where my father's company would handle all major campus events for the next 5 years. "This partnership represents more than catering," Richard announced at the signing ceremony, his arm around Mason for the photographers. "It's about investing in the next generation of leaders." I watched the live stream from my dorm room, noting how the university administrators smiled tightly at the cameras while the actual catering staff, people I recognized from my night shifts, stood invisible in the background. My phone buzzed with a text from my mother. "Jordan, I hope you're watching. Your brother is making us all proud." The message stung, but it also clarified something I'd been wrestling with for months. She'd written, "your brother," not Mason. Even in her attempt to bridge the gap between us, she couldn't separate his achievements from her expectations of family loyalty. That evening, I received another text from her, sent after midnight when Richard would be asleep. "I miss having you home for dinner." 3 words that said everything and nothing. She missed me, but not enough to question why I'd disappeared. She wanted connection, but only within the boundaries her husband had drawn. I stared at that message for 20 minutes before typing back, "I miss being seen." She never replied. If they wouldn't invite me to the table, I'd change what that table meant entirely. Dr. Priya Mehman's office overlooked the quad where I'd soon deliver my valedictory speech. But that spring afternoon, we were focused on something that mattered more than any graduation ceremony: accountability. "You have the documentation," she said, reviewing the stack of timesheets Marcus had quietly provided over the past year. "Systematic wage theft, unsafe working conditions, deliberate understaffing. This isn't just about your family's company. This is about an entire industry that profits from exploitation." I spread the papers across her desk: payroll records showing mysteriously edited hours, scheduling matrices that built in no break time, insurance forms that classified full-time workers as part-time to avoid benefits. Marcus had been meticulous, photographing everything with the patience of someone who'd seen too many workers suffer in silence. "The question," Dr. Rahman continued, "is what you want to do with it. Expose them publicly? File complaints with labor boards? Or something more strategic? I want to change the system, not just embarrass them." She nodded approvingly. "Then we need to think bigger than gotcha journalism. We need leverage that creates lasting reform." That's when she showed me the university's contract renewal schedule. Lakeview State's 5-year agreement with Hale Signature Events was up for review, along with similar contracts at 3 other universities in the consortium. Millions of dollars in revenue, all contingent on compliance with institutional values. What if universities required their vendors to sign fair work accords, living wages, transparent scheduling, worker representation in disputes, not as suggestions, but as contract requirements? The idea crystallized over the following weeks. Anna helped draft language that couldn't be circumvented by corporate lawyers. Harper built cost models proving that ethical practices wouldn't kill profit margins, just reduce them to reasonable levels. Marcus provided real-world feedback on what protections actually mattered to workers. "This has to be transparent," Dr. Rahman insisted as we refined the final document. "No secret ambushes, no public humiliation. We present the accord as what it is, a chance for companies to align their practices with their stated values." Anna pushed back during one late-night session at the community center. "Jordan, be honest about what this is really about. Are you trying to fix the system, or are you trying to force your family to acknowledge you?" The question hung in the air like smoke. I thought about Mason's confident interviews, Richard's dismissive glances, Vivien's guilty texts. I thought about Theo struggling with homework at a kitchen table while his mother worked a double shift, and Harper calculating whether she could afford both textbooks and groceries. "If I wanted their acknowledgement, I'd still be fighting for scraps at their table," I said finally. This is about making sure other people don't have to. Good, because revenge burns out. Justice builds something lasting. I didn't need to break Hale's signature events. I needed to make them accountable to their workers, their community, and eventually to themselves. 3 weeks before graduation, the Chicago Tribune ran a feature story that made my stomach clench. The headline read, "Young Visionary, Mason Hale charts the future of luxury hospitality." Below it, a glossy photo showed my brother in a perfectly tailored suit standing in the marble lobby of Hale's signature events downtown headquarters. At 22, Mason Hale represents a new generation of business leaders who understand that success isn't just about profit, it's about impact, the reporter gushed. His innovative approach to client relations has already transformed how the company approaches university partnerships. I read the article twice, noting how Mason took credit for streamlining operations and enhancing efficiency metrics, corporate speak for the cost-cutting measures that squeezed workers' schedules and wages. The piece ended with Richard's quote, "Mason is the heir that matters. He embodies everything our family business represents."
The words hit like a physical blow, even though I'd heard variations of them my entire life. The heir who matters, as if my existence was just background noise to their real story. That same week, I finalized the donation paperwork for the First Gen Scholar Center. Sitting in the law offices of Williams & Associates, I signed document after document as Jordan Reyes on behalf of North Star Foundation. The lawyer, an elderly woman with kind eyes, smiled as she notarized the final page. "This is quite generous," she said. "The university will be thrilled. I hope you're prepared for the recognition ceremony. They'll want to thank their mysterious benefactor properly." "That's the point," I replied, thinking about the bronze plaque that would soon bear my mother's maiden name for all the world to see. Meanwhile, Aunt Liza helped me refine my valedictory speech in her cramped teacher's lounge at Roosevelt High. She read through my draft with the careful attention of someone who'd spent 20 years helping teenagers find their voices. "You need to make this about them, not you," she said, circling phrases that sounded too bitter. "The families watching, they felt invisible too. Give them words they can take home." I rewrote the section about first-generation students, drawing on conversations with Bridge Lane recipients. Instead of abstract statistics, I wove in Theo's story about almost quitting his gifted program because he couldn't afford the field trip fees. I included Harper's journey from near dropout to computer science on a roll. I made it personal without making it about my pain. "Better," Liza nodded after reading the revision. "This sounds like hope, not revenge." 2 days before graduation, Mason called me for the first time in months. His voice carried an edge I'd never heard before, uncertainty bleeding through his usual confidence. "Jordan, Dad wants the whole family there for pictures after the ceremony. You know, for the company newsletter." The request felt surreal. After years of erasure, they wanted me as a prop for their victory celebration. "I'll be there," I said simply. Because I would be, just not in the way they expected. Graduation day wasn't just an ending. It was the reckoning they'd never seen coming. "Jordan Reyes, this year's valedictorian." The words echoed across the quad as I stood, my cap and gown rustling in the spring breeze. 3,000 graduates applauded, but I could only focus on the 3 faces in the VIP section. My mother's hand still pressed to her throat, Mason's confident mask finally cracking, and my father's expression cycling through confusion, recognition, and something that might have been pride if it weren't so laced with shock. I walked to the podium with steady steps, each one carrying the weight of 5 years spent invisible. The microphone felt solid under my hands, grounding me as I looked out over the crowd of families who'd come to celebrate their children's achievements. Thank you, President Park. Fellow graduates, families, faculty, today we celebrate not just individual accomplishments, but the communities that made them possible. My voice carried clearly across the speakers, confident in a way it had never been at family dinners. I found Theo in the crowd, sitting with his parents who'd driven 2 hours to see the First Gen Scholars Center dedication. Anna stood near the entrance to the building with Harper and other Bridge Lane volunteers, their faces bright with anticipation. 5 years ago, I arrived at Lakeview State believing success meant earning recognition from people who had already decided what I was worth. I was wrong. I paused, letting my gaze drift toward the VIP section. Real success means building something larger than yourself, something that outlasts applause. Murmurs rippled through the crowd as families recognized the shift from typical graduation platitudes to something more personal. The First Gen Scholar Center behind me represents more than charitable giving. It represents a choice to lift others instead of climbing over them, to share resources instead of hoarding them, to measure worth by impact rather than inheritance. I saw Richard lean forward, his businessman's instincts recognizing a setup. Mason's face had gone pale beneath his carefully styled hair. Which brings me to today's second announcement. I pulled out the folded document that would change everything. Effective immediately, Lakeview State University is adopting a Fair Work Accord for all vendor partnerships. This agreement ensures living wages, transparent scheduling, and worker representation for everyone who helps make our campus community possible. The camera operators, sensing drama, zoomed in on the VIP section. Richard's jaw tightened as he realized where this was heading. Companies like Hale's Signature Events have 30 days to sign this accord or face contract termination. Northwestern, DePaul, and University of Illinois have agreed to adopt identical standards. I looked directly at my father. This isn't about punishment. It's about alignment. Aligning business practices with stated values. Aligning profit with purpose.
The silence stretched taut as everyone processed the implications. Millions in contracts hung in the balance, all dependent on a single signature. I want to thank the workers who documented these issues at great personal risk, the administrators who chose principle over convenience, and the students who reminded me that change requires courage, not permission. I folded the paper and looked out over the crowd one final time. I stopped asking for a seat at their table and built one long enough for everyone. As applause thundered across the quad, cameras captured Richard Hale reaching for his phone, his empire's future suddenly requiring a choice between ethics and profit. The reckoning had finally begun. The ink was still drying on Richard's signature when I found myself standing outside the First Gen Scholar Center, watching families stream through the doors for the dedication reception. My father had signed the Fair Work Accord with cameras rolling, his businessman's pragmatism overriding his wounded pride. The contracts were worth more than his ego, and we both knew it. But the real victory wasn't his signature. It was the laughter echoing from inside the building. Theo bounded up to me with his parents in tow, his face bright with excitement. "Jordan, did you see? They have a whole wall of star maps in the study room, and Miss Anna says there's going to be a telescope on the roof." His mother, Maria, gripped my hand with quiet intensity. "Mijo, what you did for these kids, for our community?" She couldn't finish the sentence, but she didn't need to. Her eyes said everything. Inside the center, therapy dogs Gus and Lemon worked the crowd with professional expertise. Gus, a golden retriever with the patience of a saint, leaned against overwhelmed parents, while Lemon, a corgi with boundless optimism, performed tricks for giggling children. Even in chaos, they found the people who needed comfort most. Harper appeared at my elbow, tablet in hand, as always. "Early numbers look good," she reported with the satisfaction of someone whose spreadsheets had just changed the world. "3 more universities called during your speech. They want our implementation model." Anna emerged from a cluster of first-gen families, her smile radiant. "You know what the best part is? Half these kids don't know your name yet. To them, you're just the guy who made sure they could afford textbooks." She bumped my shoulder playfully. "That's real power." I spotted my family near the entrance, looking like survivors of a shipwreck. Mason stood apart from our parents, his usual confidence replaced with something raw, uncertainty maybe, or the beginning of genuine self-reflection.
He kept glancing at the families around him, perhaps seeing for the first time what actual achievement looked like when it wasn't handed down. Vivien approached first, moving through the crowd with uncharacteristic tentativeness. When she reached me, she spoke just loud enough for me to hear over the celebration. "I see you now," she whispered, her voice thick with years of regret. "I should have seen you all along." Before I could respond, she pressed something into my hand, a small photo from my childhood, the one where I'd won that forgotten academic award. She'd kept it all these years. Richard maintained his distance, but I caught him watching as students explained their projects to visiting donors. His expression was unreadable, but for the first time in my memory, he wasn't calculating business angles. He was just listening. As the Chicago evening settled over the campus, I walked out of the center into the tree-lined quad, where it all began. The graduation chairs had been cleared, but the memory of this afternoon would reshape everything that came after. I'd stopped asking for a seat at their table and built one long enough for everyone. As applause thundered across the quad, cameras captured Richard Hale reaching for his phone, his empire's future suddenly requiring a choice between ethics and profit. The reckoning had finally begun.
Up next, we have 2 more incredible stories that are waiting for you. Just click the image you want to watch, and it will take you there. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe. It would mean a lot.